A massive tax cut bill is in the works, spearheaded by President Trump, and it could bring significant changes for millions of Americans. This proposed legislation includes several key provisions: no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security benefits for seniors, no tax on overtime pay, and the renewal of the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which are set to expire this year. These proposed changes are ambitious and could have a substantial financial impact on individuals and businesses alike. However, such sweeping tax cuts come with a price. Where will the government find the funding to compensate for these revenue reductions? The answer may lie in substantial spending cuts, and the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, has provided an analysis suggesting that Medicare and Medicaid could be at risk. To understand the situation better, let's break down the numbers. The budget proposal requires $880 billion in mandatory spending cuts across different programs. Out of this total, $581 billion has already been identified, but that still leaves $299 billion that needs to be cut from somewhere. The most likely targets? Medicare and Medicaid. Analysts believe that cuts are more likely to impact Medicaid than Medicare. Medicaid is a critical program that provides healthcare coverage to low-income individuals and families. According to data from KFF, approximately 80% of children under the federal poverty level rely on Medicaid. Additionally, 48% of adults below the poverty level and 41% of disabled adults between the ages of 19 and 64 receive Medicaid benefits. Medicaid is jointly funded by both federal and state governments, meaning that if federal contributions decrease, states will either have to cut services or find alternative funding sources to make up the difference. There is a sharp divide between Republicans and Democrats on how to approach these cuts. Democrats argue that Republicans are deliberately targeting Medicare and Medicaid to offset the cost of Trump's tax cuts. On the other hand, Republicans insist that they are not targeting Medicare or Medicaid itself, but rather focusing on reducing fraud, waste, and abuse within these programs. Their claim is that eliminating inefficiencies and implementing work requirements for able-bodied adults could save billions of dollars and help fund tax cuts without cutting essential services. To better illustrate both sides of this debate, let's look at statements from key political figures. Democrats have raised concerns that this tax plan disproportionately benefits the wealthiest Americans while placing the burden on the most vulnerable populations. They emphasize that Medicaid cuts would directly impact millions of low-income families and individuals with disabilities. During a recent vote, nearly every Republican supported a measure that included significant Medicaid cuts while pushing forward with major tax reductions for the wealthiest 1% of Americans. Republicans, however, counter that their plan does not cut benefits but rather seeks to eliminate inefficiencies. They argue that Medicaid is plagued by fraud and that implementing stricter eligibility requirements and work mandates will improve the system without reducing necessary aid. One prominent Republican lawmaker stated, "Medicaid is infamous for fraud, waste, and abuse. By some estimates, large percentages of the allocated dollars are wasted or stolen. We are simply ensuring that these programs." Amid this debate, President Trump himself has reassured the public that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security will not be touched except for efforts to root out fraud and prevent illegal recipients from accessing benefits. He stated, "Read my lips, we are not going to touch Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. What we are going to do is eliminate fraud and ensure that people who shouldn't be on these programs aren't taking advantage of them." He emphasized that this approach would generate substantial savings while preserving essential services for those who truly need them. However, skepticism remains. Some critics argue that these statements may not hold up once the final legislation is drafted. A recent incident on the House floor further fueled concerns. Congressman Al Green protested against potential Medicaid and Social Security cuts during a session, resulting in him being escorted out. He later stated, "This isn't about me. This is about the millions of Americans who will suffer if these cuts go through. We need to raise the Social Security cap, protect Medicare, and for God's sake, don't cut Medicaid." Looking ahead, the big question remains, will this bill pass? At this stage, it's too early to tell. The bill has not yet been formally drafted, and there will be significant negotiations before any final decision is reached. The political landscape is highly polarized, and while Republicans control key legislative bodies, they will still need to garner sufficient support to push the bill through. Many experts predict that certain elements of Trump's proposed tax cuts will be scaled back due to budget constraints. However, the push for permanent income tax reductions, the elimination of taxes on tips and overtime, and the extension of the 2017 tax cuts will remain central goals. Ultimately, this legislation will have far-reaching implications for millions of Americans, particularly seniors, low-income families, and working-class individuals. The debate over funding tax cuts versus preserving essential social programs will continue to be a key issue in the coming months. As we await further developments, it is crucial to stay informed and engaged in the discussion. What are your thoughts on these proposed changes? Do you believe that eliminating fraud alone will be enough to fund these tax cuts, or do you think deeper spending cuts will be necessary? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.